Again. Okay, let's try that. Okay, technical issues here. So this is Dr. Joe on this Wealth Wednesday. Hope everyone's doing well. It's great down here in the Washington, D.C. area. It's very hot and warm and so on. So today we're going to talk about knowing what I know now, what would I tell my younger self? Knowing what I know now, what would I tell my younger self? And to give you some background, I'm going to show you my younger self. How about that? So let's have a look. See if I can get my younger self on the screen. And so let's have a look. So it's this one. It goes here. There's my younger self. Can you see me, everybody? Don't I look handsome? So this is me. I just finished college, and I was on my way to America. So this is taken at the airport, Heathrow Airport in London in 1985. Look at my afro. Don't I look good? Look at those glasses. Don't they look good? So this is me on my way to America, on my journey here. Obviously, I look a lot slimmer, but that's okay. It's okay. Look at my mustache. Anyway, so what I'm going to talk about today is what would I tell this guy, knowing what I know now, and so on. So let's go back to the main screen, which is this one, I think. There you go. So what would I tell this guy, knowing what I know now? I'm going to break it down to about 6 or 7 little, scenarios. And so on. So as you know, my story, I was born in Ghana, went to England when I was about 5 years old. And the Afro speaks volumes, huh? So bring back the Afro days. Huh? So anyway, I came to the US. Essentially, I knew one person in the US, which was my boss. And I had like $100 in my pocket in 2 suitcases. That's essentially how I came here. I really didn't have an infrastructure here. I didn't have a founder. I didn't have any family here. I just came over as a lone ranger. So it's kind of scary. But I always wanted to come to America, and the opportunity arose, and so I took it. And I bought my first house after watching an infomercial from a guru. And those guru guys, you too can do this. All you gotta do is give me your credit card, and all will be revealed. So I gave him my credit card and bought this guy's course, and it sounded so easy. I had visions of palm trees, retirement, and so forth, and so on. Anyway, I bought my first house in Washington in '87, and it was a complete and utter disaster. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt, I was bamboozled, I suppose, by this guy who told me that this is a great deal, and I took his word for it. Because in England, all Americans are honest, so I took this man at his word, and lo and behold, he was lying to his teeth to me. Anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but essentially, I didn't know what I was doing. I bought a house, and at the time, people were accusing me of paying too much for this house. And it was a single-family row house in Washington, and I paid $47,000 for this thing. And people say I was getting ripped off. Anyway, I didn't know what I was doing, so I bought the house anyway. And so it was a horrible experience. The tenants didn't want to pay me. They were giving me all kind of sob stories. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know anything about landlord-tenant laws. I didn't know nothing. And but I, persevered. They didn't pay me for about 6 months. And but in the end, I was able to turn that thing around. And then I sort of picked myself up, and then bought my next house, and then bought my next house. And as they say, the rest is history. So what I'm going to be talking about is, 35 years plus from that time, and some of the experiences, that I like to share with you. And so hopefully you can learn from some of these things, and hopefully that, it could be words of wisdom for you. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go through my list of lessons learned, and so on. So let's have a look. The first one I realized was that once you buy a property, especially if you're using the buy and hold method, which is what I do, I buy, fix it up, and hold on to properties. It's important that you get a good deal But really, at the end of the day, if you're going to hold on to property, the real money is the delta between when you bought it and when you decide to implement your exit strategy, whether it be to sell it, or whatever. That's the delta. There is where you make your money. And that could be a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10, 15, 20, 30 years from that point. And so the fact that you got a good deal or it wasn't such a great deal in day one is really irrelevant 5, 10, 15 years from now, especially if you bought in an appreciating market. And but the key is your ability to hold on to that asset during that delta period. So that's where management comes in. So really your success is going to depend on your ability to manage that asset during that period of time. Absolutely critical. I didn't understand that. I just thought that, hey, I bought a house, everything's going to be okay. I didn't really understand the management side, making sure that I protect that asset over the period of time, making sure I protect that relationship with the tenant over that period of time, such that it's a value added asset. So that house which I bought for $47,000 when I first year, people told me I was paying too much for that house. And just a point in context, houses on that block now are going for $900,000. Okay, so I could have paid $100,000 instead of $47,000 at that time. It really is irrelevant now that the houses in that block are going for $900,000. You see what I'm saying? I could have overpaid for that house at that time, but still be okay 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. It's the management, my ability to hold on to that asset, which has been the key. Okay, so that's the first lesson I learned from that experience is management is the key. And obviously, if you're going to manage, then a couple of things are really important. There's the whole idea of tenant screening, your ability to screen tenants, and then obviously your ability to hold on to the tenants afterwards becomes absolutely key as well. Okay, so obviously management, I don't want to go into too much detail into the management because we're going to have next month, we're going to have a tenant management month where we're going to go into more detail about tenant screening, tenant management, customer retention, and all steps associated with that. Okay, so that's the first lesson learned. The second lesson I learned was, the term house hacking wasn't invented by Brandon Turner at that time, okay, in the 80s. Probably Brandon wasn't born then. But the point is that the second house I bought that house with the specific strategy of living in one of the rooms. It was a 3-bedroom row house. I lived in one of the bedrooms, and I then rented the basement. I then rented a couple of rooms in the house. So essentially, I was implementing a house hacking strategy. I didn't call it that. I just wanted to figure a way whereby I could live in a house and pay no money. And because if I was able to reduce my living expenses, then I could save money for my job and then use that as potential down payment and some cash reserves for my next property. So I realized that that's a viable strategy, house hacking, and it really is something that we all should consider, because for the most people, your housing expenses is by far the largest expense that you incur, and therefore, if you're able to reduce that expense, then you can save a lot of money rather than stopping going to Starbucks or going out to a restaurant once a week. That's really small change compared to cutting down your housing expenses. If you can figure a way to cut your housing expenses by 10%, 20, 30, 40, 50%, you can really save money and build your financial strategy and so forth. Okay, so that's the second tip, is that I realized the power of house hacking. And I probably should have started that earlier, and therefore I could have saved money towards buying my next properties and so forth. The next lesson learned, number 3, is you don't as I said before, you don't need a perfect deal to start investing. You really don't have to wait until all the stars are aligned before you buy a house. Okay, because the stars will never align. And that's the problem which a lot of new investors have, is that, well, I want to wait until I've got this in place. Well, I want to wait until I've got that in place. Well, I want to wait for this to happen. I want to wait for that to happen. It is what it is. You just have to stop. You just have to sort of say, I know enough, and I'm just going to pull the trigger and move on. Because really, the only way you learn is by taking action. And if you're forever delaying that, you really never learn anything. You're just coming up with excuses. And so the perfect deal will never arise. You just have to create essentially create a deal from something if it's possible. And because the first deal in reality is never a home run. It just doesn't work that way. And because you're going to make a lot of mistakes, especially if you're new. You're going to you don't have your team probably in place. You probably don't have your systems in place. You probably don't have certain processes in place. You probably don't have a lot of things in place, but you'll gather a lot of that once you do and execute your first deal. I mean, a case in point would be some of the students that we have from the JV program. In fact, we had a meeting last Saturday where a couple of the students decided to pull the trigger and buy their first deals. And yes, they made a lot of mistakes. Yes, there were some curveballs that were thrown in their faces, but they were able to. But they were able to soldier through, and and get to the finish line. And I think they are so much better for it. And the same thing for you. If you're just waiting till all the stars are aligned, you'll never do anything. You just have to just say, I know enough. I've got certain things in place. I'm just going to pull the trigger and I'll take it from there. So that's this. The third thing is, don't necessarily wait until all the stars are aligned, because they won't be. Okay. So then it goes on to the next one, which is focus on the fundamentals and about real estate investing. I mean, there's always more that you can learn about real estate. And you can say, well, I want to go to this boot camp. I want to take some more YouTube classes. Yeah, I want to do this. I want until I know everything. You won't know everything. I don't know everything. You just have to focus on the fundamentals. What's a good deal? How do I raise the money? How do I sort of fix up a property? How do I find tenants? How do I screen? I mean, these are the fundamentals that you don't need to worry about. Should I create a Delaware statutory trust, or what kind of asset protection system program should I have? Or do I need, a Wyoming LLC versus a Nevada LLC? You don't need, you don't. You just buy a house, okay? Why worry about asset protection if you don't have any assets to protect? Let's get the assets first, and we'll worry about protecting them later on. So that's my thing, is that focus on the fundamentals, and the rest will be okay. And so on. Otherwise, you'll think you'll never think that you have it. Enough. Okay. So that's the number. Is that number 4? I suppose. Let me just kind of recap where we are, and before I get too far. So what I said was that the first one is that what's it called? Once you buy a house, the key to your success is going to be the management. Okay. So it's good to have a good deal, but if you're going to hold on to the asset, then your ability to manage that asset from the day that you bought it all the way through to implement your exit strategy is going to be absolutely critical. And therefore your property management skills is going to take important. Your ability to find good tenants, screen tenants, manage that tenant relationships becomes really, and have the tenants pay you, protect your asset, is going to be key. The second thing I talked about is that house hacking is a great way to start. For most people, the living expenses by far the largest expenses they have. If they can cut that down, then that will allow them to have more money to save and do other things. So that's house hacking, is something which I recommend everybody should try to do, especially when they're first starting out. Then the third thing is that you don't need the perfect deal to start. The stars will never align. You just have to get a good deal to the best of your ability, and then pull the trigger and take action and move on. You'll never be a home run in your first deal. You'll learn a lot, And then from that experience, you then go on to the next one and next one and so forth. So in my case, the first deal I bought was not a perfect deal by all means, but I pulled the trigger, and I learned so much about from that deal. And then I use that experience towards the next deal and so forth and so on. Okay. And that's pretty much, and again, the perfect deal is just not something it's something that's not going to happen. Okay, let's go to the next one, which is this one, I think. Focus on the fundamentals and set aside the rest for later. Okay, just know what you need to know and then get on with it. Don't have to wait for to have all your systems in place, all your processes in place, and so on. You just have to just get on with it. Okay, the next lesson learned was that you do need a cash reserve. Despite what these gurus tell you, you don't need money. You do need money, and you do need to have some reserves in your account because things happen, things go wrong. Life happens. Tenant may not pay you. The AC unit may break down. The roof may leak. If you don't have money, if you don't have reserves, then you're going to have a little problem. So then the question becomes, how much reserves do you need to have? And that just depends. You don't need gazillion dollars in reserves to just get started. No, you just need adequate. Typically for me, when I'm renting, I have about 2 months reserves, 2 to 3 months reserves set aside for each property. When you're first starting out, you have some money just in case the renovation gets extended. If the worst case scenario, you can always use a credit card. Obviously, I don't recommend that, but you should always have ability to access cash because things happen and a rainy day does occur, and you want to make sure that you have the resources available to be able to take care of that. So that's the next lesson learned. I tell myself, I didn't really, when I bought my first house, I really didn't have any reserves. I just bought this house, and when the tenants didn't pay me for 6 months, luckily I had a job. And so my income from my job was able to help me pay the mortgage, whilst these tenants were giving me all these sob stories about why they couldn't pay me the rent. So you do need reserves. Set aside some reserves. Talk to mentors, which I'll discuss a bit later on, who can sort of share with you, how much to set aside and so forth. It depends on the neighborhood, the area, the state that you're in, the value of the house, the condition of the property. All these things matter, in terms of how much you want to allocate towards the cash reserves. Okay, let's move on and avoid bad area. We're going to go down to Q&A session shortly, and so if you got some questions you want to ask me, get them ready. We'll be ready in about 5 or 10 minutes. So get your questions ready. We're going to have a good Q&A session with Dr. Joe. So leave your questions in the chat box, and I will certainly try to answer them there. Okay, avoid bad areas. Well, bad areas is all relative, I suppose. One man or one woman's bad area is another man's good area, or another woman's good area, and so on. So it's all relative. And but one thing I do know though is that if you pick, well, bad areas, as I said, is relative. The first house I bought at the time, some people would have thought that was a bad area. It wasn't that great. It was a C- neighborhood, and but people live there. That's the important thing. And the neighborhood that it's in, people want to live there. People, the schools are nearby, shopping is nearby, recreation, transportation, they're all nearby. So you don't need to have buy houses, in the best neighborhoods. No, you can find houses in all neighborhoods that you can acquire. I'm just not knowing what I know now. I'm probably not going to buy any more. I don't recommend that you start off in quote unquote war zones. War zones are sort of D, E neighborhoods. The reason why, and there's nothing wrong with it. If that's where you can start, that's where you start. It's okay. You got to start somewhere. If that's where all your budget allows you to start, then fine, start there. It's okay. But I think that you should set your expectations to move up to from there, maybe a D neighborhood to a C minus neighborhood, and then from a C minus to a C and so forth. Why do I say that? Because the neighborhood where your house is has a lot to do with the type of tenant that you're likely to attract and how long those tenants will likely stay. Okay. If it's a really bad neighborhood where it's not safe, there's a lot of criminal activity going on, then there's a pretty good chance that, you're going to have a high turnover, especially if you're catering to families, because there'll come a point whereby the people may not feel safe. And especially if they're very protective of their children, they're going to say, we need to move to a better environment where our kids can be safer. And I don't have to worry about getting shot at. I don't have to worry about coming home, my stuff is broken into. I don't have to worry about the gangsters all over the place. If that's all you can afford, then so be it. But I don't think it's a place where a lot of people want to end up. If given a better opportunity, they'll probably leave to go somewhere else. And therefore, you're going to have that turnover, which is really, really the key. If you can minimize your turnover costs, then you should be, a lot of the profits that you make stays in your pocket. So again, be selective where you buy. Start where you can, afford, but try to avoid the war zones and those neighborhoods where they're just not safe, and and things like that. But again, I'm not saying that you should buy the house on top of the hill and things like that. No, you start where you can, and and the other thing is that if you're doing buy and hold, then not all areas appreciate the same. That's something which I've learned. So the location where you buy your home has a lot to do with how it's going to appreciate, because that's where the real money is. So try to buy in areas where it's more likely to appreciate, because if you're going to go through the hassles of tenants, finding tenants, screening tenants, managing tenants, and so forth, you want a payday at the end of the day, and hopefully the appreciation will provide you with that payday. Okay, so avoid bad areas is one idea. And then another lesson learned, networking. When I first started, I didn't really network. I was kind of the lone ranger, the lone wolf, as they say. I try to do it all myself. And and I was working. I had a full-time job at the time as well. And it's not efficient way to do it. You need to network. You need to be able to surround yourself with people who can assist you, whether it be people who can help you find deals, whether it be good real estate agents, agents who can find you and analyze and advise you on what to buy, where to buy. Obviously, you're going to need attorneys. You're going to need home inspectors, lenders, wholesalers, turnkey sellers, property managers, contractors. You're going to need all those things, which means that to find those people requires a certain level of networking. I'm not a great, well, when I first started, I wasn't a great networker. I'm not really a great networker myself right now, to the truth. But I realize now that I do need to, expand my my circles, and so I do make an effort to develop relationships with different types of people, whether it be, as I said before, lenders, real estate agents, wholesalers, contractors, property managers, and the likes of those things. I'm always trying to expand my network, because you never know when you may be able to use some of those folks to assist you. So I always try to create what I call win-win scenarios, whereby it makes sense for the other party to want to do business with me. What's in it for them? And such that, again, we can shake hands or we can come to some terms and everybody's happy. I've got good contractors because I look out for them. I've got great lenders because I look out for them. I've got a network of deal finders because I try to take care of them, look out for them, and so on. That's really the key, is that you need to start developing your network, because you really can't do this by yourself, especially if you're working full time. It's just It's just too hard. So that's your the what's it called, network, like your income depends on it, because it really does, and so on. And then finally, if you don't have much experience, or don't have much money, partner up. You know, partner up. There's people out there. You don't need to recreate the wheel. I didn't need to recreate. I sort of recreated the wheel because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anybody. But looking back now, it really was a painful journey that was unnecessary. I could have, met other people, expanded my circles where I met people. Maybe I should have attended RIA meetings, Real Estate Investment Association meetings. Maybe I should have done more to find experienced people. I just sort of did this by myself. If I was able to find a Dr. Joe at that time, somebody who was experienced, somebody who was knowledgeable, somebody who sort of been through the ringer a few times, they could have helped me avoid a lot of the mistakes which I made. Yeah, it would have saved me some time, so much time, so much stress, so much aggravation. It's painful when you have a contractor who's not delivering, is not producing, who's not doing what they're supposed to do. It's very painful when you have tenants who don't pay you, who are giving you giving you a hard time. They are using the legal system to run rings around you. It's a very, very painful experience when things go wrong, especially when you got hard-earned money on the line. It's stressful, and but a lot of those mistakes, quote unquote, are avoidable. And there are people out there who've already made those mistakes. And therefore, if you can work with them, network with them, they can advise you on what to avoid, the mistakes you need to avoid to make, and things like that. So I think there's a saying: a wise man learns from his mistakes, but a genius learns from other people's mistakes. Okay, so I think that's what I learned, is that I need to, if you're gonna, I wish I was a genius at that time, which is I wish I learned from other people's mistakes, and therefore I didn't have to make those mistakes myself. I would have been a lot further than where I ended up to. So I did reach financial independence in 2003, June the 6th, in fact, 2003, when my income from my rental properties equaled my income from my job. And I was able to sort of transition away from the corporate world, to sort of being focused on real estate investment and through passive income and so on. So it took quite some time, but that's what I would have told my younger self, all these different things. So I'm going to bring back my younger guy again. So let's have a look. Here he is. Here's the guy. So, young man, this is what I would tell you. I would advise you, young man, that management is the key. Pull the trigger, make it happen. It's okay. You're going to make some mistakes, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world. You learn from the mistakes and keep going. Keep your costs down by maybe implementing the house hack strategy. Save money if you can. And because if you can cut down on your housing expenses, it allows you to save money in reserves and things like that. Young man, what else I would say is that you don't need to have a perfect deal to start investing. It's okay. You just start and you'll figure the rest out. The first deal is not going to be a home run, but it's going to be okay. Focus on the fundamentals. Don't get stuck on these convoluted things. Know how to find a good deal, how to analyze a deal, how to get financing, how to sort of manage the contractor relation. These are the fundamentals. You need to focus on those, not get too caught up on the other stuff, which I call fluff, until later on. Get your feet wet. Learn from your mistakes that you're going to make. You will make mistakes, but it's going to be okay at the end of the day. Set aside some money through cash reserves. As I said before, if you keep your expenses down, you should be fine. And invest in areas where you're more likely to attract tenants that's going to pay you, take care of your properties, and so on. So try to buy in areas whereby you can attract the tenants who are going to take care of your property and hopefully allow you to benefit from the asset that you've purchased. Network. Don't be a lone wolf. There's people out there who are more experienced than you. Network to find that, expand your circles. And if you don't have the money, if you don't have the experience, there are people out there who do have it. And try to find those people, try to work with those people, try to create win-win scenarios such that you can get to where you need to go to a lot faster. And therefore, you'll be able to reach a financial independence, not in 5, 10, 15, not in 20 years or whatever it was for me. I think it was 15 years for me. I could have probably done it in 10 years if I knew what I knew. Probably could have done it even quicker than that. But I stayed focused, young man. Stay focused. It'll be okay. And you'll be fine. So that's the words of wisdom I say to my younger self. How about that? And speaking like a wise father to his young son. It reminds me of that book. If you haven't read it, what's it called? The something Gardener. Oh, the something Gardener. It's a really good book. I mean, if you know what I'm talking about, read it in the what's it called? You put it in the tab. It's a really good book. Essentially, it's about an elderly person, providing wisdom to his younger self and so forth. So that, my friends, is what I would tell my younger self, know what I know now. So we're going to transition over to the Q&A, and let me have some of your questions, and then we will take it from there. Okay. Question from Alan Costa. Hey, Alan. Hey, Dr. Joe, do you prefer rent to students or families? In other words, how can you evaluate a great tenant? How do you evaluate a great tenant? Good question, Alan. Again, we're going to be having next month, well, the month of August, we're going to be focusing primarily on landlording matters. We're going to call it tenant, I think landlording month, or tenant screening month, I think we're going to call it. So we're going to go to a lot of detail about all things related to landlording, how to find tenants, how to screen tenants, how to manage tenants. We're going to have, I'm probably going to invite a couple of my tenants to the live stream. We're going to have maybe another landlord in there. It's going to be really focused on that. So go back to your question. How do you, can you put it up again, please? The question is, how do you essentially, do you prefer to rent to students or families? I personally prefer to rent to families because, I do a lot of Section 8s. I like families because families tend to be a lot more stable. Once the family's settled, especially if the children are settled and part of the community, they tend to stay a lot longer. Students, I've never really rented to students. I recall I was a student at one time, so I know pretty much how students are. Students don't have any money. They don't have money. It's all about, co-signing from the parents. And when I was younger, I did some wild, crazy stuff. So I know you don't believe me, but what's it called? Students tend to be a lot more transient. And so I like stability. I like people to stay for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's not going to happen with students. It's all about reducing turnover for me. Again, with that said, there are a lot of landlords out there who make a lot of money renting to students. So it's a different niche. There's a successful way to do it. And, it's all about the screening, as you indicated there. How do you make sure that this tenant is going to, or these students are going to take care of your property? How do you make sure that these students are going to pay and, and kind of protect your investment? How are you going to do all that? So there's people who have cracked that code in terms of student rental, especially if you live in an area where you're closer to major colleges, schools, universities, and so on. It's a great niche. It's just that it's an area I haven't, focused on. But the concepts are still the same, which we're going to discuss starting next week, which is you got to identify who your target tenant is going to be, who your ideal, what I call tier 1 tenant is going to be. Who are these people? What are they looking for? Where do they want to live? Where do they not want to live? Who do they want to rent from? Who do they not want to rent for? All these things will help you to identify who this person is. And then you can then start positioning your product, your house, your property to target those people. If you can do that, you can attract them, and then you can screen accordingly. Okay. So hopefully that's a good question. Let's go on to the next one. Yes, it's called A Wealthy Gardener. There you go. It's a good book. It's a really good book. I highly. It's got a companion because through that book, there's a lot of wisdom there, and there's a companion book. It's called it's like sayings. It's like proverbs. These old time, like, I don't know. A wise man learns from mistakes. A genius learns from other people. That's a proverb. There's a lot of those things sprinkled throughout the entire book, The Wealthy Gardener. So I bought the companion book as well. It's a really good book. So check it out if you can. Let me know what you think. Okay. Next one is, what's your favorite part about being an investor? This is from Vegan Jackboy. Again, if you got some questions, let's put it down. I want to try and get through as many questions as I can. We will usually run out of we don't have enough time to go through all the questions. So if you got some questions, put them down so I can hit them as much as possible. So this is from Vegan Jackboy on YouTube. What's your favorite part of being an investor? What's my favorite part is that I enjoy I enjoy the passive income. The fact that every month, especially since I have a lot of Section 8s, every month the money hits my account like clockwork. I don't have to go knock on people's doors. The bulk of the rent hits my account, guaranteed, come what may, good times, bad times. It really doesn't matter. I like that part of it. I also like the part whereby, I can build wealth. The house I gave you as an example, I bought it for 47,000. Now it's in a block of 900,000, and that would not be possible if I wouldn't create that kind of wealth by investing in stocks or putting it into a savings account, or it's just not possible. You can do that with real estate, and it's a proven formula, and I don't need to convince you. I think we all know it's possible. And there are also a lot of other benefits, cash flow benefits, tax benefits, appreciation, leverage, and all those different things. So I enjoy the fact that real estate can be a vehicle to building wealth. And then what I do, I also enjoy the fact that I'm making a difference in a lot of my tenants' lives. The story I think I shared with Brandon last week, whereby one of my tenants, just by being in my home, a couple of her children have got free rides to go to college. That would not have happened if they weren't in my home. I've got stories whereby families have left really bad areas and now live in a safe, good neighborhood. That would not be possible if I didn't give them that chance. So I enjoy the fact that I'm making a difference in other people's lives as well. It's a sense of satisfaction, really. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's good to make money, but it's also good to make a difference in people's lives. That's just me. That's how I feel. And I think there's a lot of people that also feel the same way. And I've kind of moved on to the next phase now, which is I don't want to buy a house a week. I don't want to get 8,000 units like Brandon. That doesn't really appeal to me. What's probably more important now is helping other people replicate what I do, if that makes sense. So sharing my knowledge, my experience, my expertise with other students, with other investors, and developing partnerships and relationships with like-minded people. I really enjoy that. But, also I like the fact that through real estate, it's giving me the opportunity to have more control over my time. So if I want to, not do anything, I don't have to do anything. If I want to spend more time with my family, I can do that. If I want to travel, I can do that. It's just giving me that flexibility. And, I never thought that this would be I really didn't think that would be possible. I really didn't when I first came to the US. And despite what a lot of people say, and you're going to have to believe me, there's no place like the United States. There isn't. I'm an immigrant, so I can compare the US to other places. There's no place like it. It's got a lot of problems here, but it's a great place to if you're focused, if you got direction, and you want to aspire. There's no other place like it, in my opinion, and so on. So that's what I like about real estate. Okay, Tyrone Miles, can you let us know if you'll be doing another JV program in the future? Also, can you talk a little bit about what the program is? Thanks, Dr. Joe. Okay, Tyrone. The JV program, I'll be doing another JV program. I'm probably going to kick it off in a couple of months. I made a competition out. Anyways, let me just, so yeah, so what is the JV program? The JV program is I provide people an opportunity to look over my shoulders as I do a deal. The premise is that the best way to learn real estate, in my opinion, is to do a deal. Okay, you just learn so much just by pulling the trigger and make it happen. You can't beat that experience. Short of that, the next best thing, in my opinion, is to look over the shoulders of somebody who's experienced, somebody who's successful, somebody who's seasoned as they do a deal. Okay, so if you can't do a deal, then the next best thing, in my opinion, is to watch or look over the shoulder of somebody else as they do a deal. And that's the premise behind the JV program. It gives people an opportunity to look over my shoulders as we do a deal, as I do a deal, and or even as one of my students do a deal, like we've got going on right now. So you just learn so much, what goes right, what goes wrong, the different options, different scenarios, the different decisions that need to be made. How do you do this? How do you do that? What's the benefits of this versus that? I mean, you see all those things as part of the program. So the last one that we just did, the tenant moved in there July the 14th of mine. It was a 2-bedroom, 2.5-bath house. And we transformed that into a 6-bedroom, 4-bath house. 6-bedroom, 4-bath from a 2.5. How is that possible? How do you do that? Where do you put the kitchen? Where do you put the bathroom? Where do you put the bedrooms? How many bedrooms? How do you get more rent? We got a garage there in this house. The garage is good, but we turn that into a bedroom. How do you do that? And so on. So all those things you learn as part of the JV program, and it's a wonderful experience, wonderful program, and to me, I think it's the greatest program ever created in the whole wide world. Very modest, aren't I? So it's really a great place. You can't learn this thing. You just have to be a part of it with somebody who's successful. And so we do the entire BRRRR all the way from the beginning all the way through to the end in terms of the rehab, the financing, finding the tenant, managing the tenant, Section 8 process, all the way through move-in and the refinance. That's what you get as part of the JV program. So we're going to have another one, hopefully, the next couple of months. If you're interested in that one, shoot me an email or go to my website. Go to my website, joeasamoah.com, joeasamoah.com, or you can shoot me an email at info@joeasamoah.com. And we'll get more information from there. So that's what the JV program is. Sign up, go to my website, joeasamoah.com, and put yourself on the email list, and you'll be notified when we're ready. Let's have a look. How many deals did it take before? This is from Marlon, the investor. How many deals did it take before you replaced your W-2 income? How many deals did I have to go through before I replaced? It took me about 15 years before I was able to transition out from my from when I bought my first house through the before leaving in 2003. So I was buying one time. It was a very slow process, like just one a year. That's all. It wasn't that much. I wasn't buying 20 houses. You don't need to. That's what I'm saying. That's another fallacy. You don't need to be buying a whole boatload of houses. You just need time to work. You just need time. You let time work for you. And for example, the house where when I first bought it, listen to this one, Marlon. The first house I bought, I was making $50 cash flow. $50. Okay, $50. That was it. And I was getting, it was a tenants from hell. These people weren't paying me, and all of going through all that headache for $50. Okay. Anybody in their right mindset say, Dr. J, are you crazy buying this house? Are you mad? There's no way I'm going to buy this house for $50 cash flow. Okay. So let's fast forward to that house today. The rent there is $4,700. Okay, same house. And so the cash flow went from $50 to $4,700. Okay. And the loan obviously is paid off. And I got a home equity line on that house, which then allowed me to tap into that home equity line to buy more houses. Okay. So that one asset has allowed me to purchase more assets. That asset is generating cash flow. That asset is giving me tax benefits. It's appreciated. So say it's in a block of $900,000 houses now. And if I took the advice of other people, I would have bought that house, but I did. So so to answer your question, Marlon, just get going. Okay, time will work in your favor if you have certain systems in place. You'll be fine. Just start now and just keep on acquiring. I was very conservative, one a year. I think most people can do 2, possibly 3 a year, and really fast track their goals. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Maurice Battle, what percentage of return are you looking to make on each deal? What's your ROI? I think that's the gist of the question. What's your ROI requirements? It depends. Okay, let's go back to the example that we just talked about, the house with $50 cash flow. I mean, I wouldn't, if I went to a calculator and put in the numbers, I wouldn't have bought that house because the ROI as of the day I bought it was nothing, 0. Okay, it didn't make any sense for me to buy that house. But one thing I did know, and was that real estate appreciates in value, especially in capital cities. I just happened to live in Washington, D.C. at that time, and I knew the same thing happens around. I did a lot of travel in my job. I lived in other countries and traveled to other countries. So I knew the dynamics in London, Paris, Rome, Copenhagen. They're all the same. Capital cities are where the money is. Capital cities are, it's the population magnet. It's where the jobs are. And so if you can own assets in capital cities, over time, they 9 out of 10 it always appreciates in value. That's just the way they are. And so I knew that over time, this asset would appreciate in value. And therefore, my key and the advice I was given was just to hold on to this thing, which is what I did. So to answer your question, it depends. If you take a long-term view, it may not make sense to buy it today, but let time work in your favor. And 5, 10, 15 years from now, you'll be thinking, what a genius you were when you buying this house. Okay. So, I mean, I kind of take a different take on things. Some houses I'm buying, especially some of the recent houses, I may not get a lot of cash flow, but it's an appreciation play. I'm making a bet that 5, 10 years from now, it's going to be worth a lot more. And therefore, I'm okay with having a lower ROI return today because I'm going to get a higher ROI later. Okay. But that's based on the premise that your cash flow is taken care of. You may have to keep a job. You can't obviously quit a job on $50. So I had a job which I was working on and so on. Okay, let's go to the next question. Ronald Christian. Good question we're getting today. Would you recommend using IRA funds once retired to buy the first property? IRA is $200K generating 13% compounding, or use other funds. Okay, so Ronald's scenario is, make sure I get it right. He's got an IRA and his retirement fund account, and currently he's got around $200K and it's generating about 13% compounding. So would he use that money? Would he take a loan from the IRA in order to buy his first property, or would he use some other funds? It depends, Ronald. It depends what other access to monies you have. The thing about the IRA is, and other retirement accounts, is that if you're not careful, you're going to incur penalties for taking money out, early withdrawals. So you could be hit with some pretty hefty penalties if you take the money out early. So be careful about that. The other thing is that if you have an IRA, or especially a 401k, you may be able to borrow and take a loan as opposed to a withdrawal. So a loan, you don't get hit with penalties. You just have to pay it back. Whereas an early withdrawal, you are hit with all kind of penalties, and therefore it's a very expensive proposition. So it just depends, Ronald, whether you are going to incur penalties or not. If you are going to incur penalties, then obviously it makes more sense to look for other sources if they're available. But if there are no sources available, then it is what it is. It may be that that's the early option to buy your first house. And, you just take the money, take the hit, and just get on with it. And so on. So it just depends, but you're generating 13%, which is not bad. Hey, I tell you one thing, my 401k statement doesn't say 13% appreciation. I'll tell you that. I don't know where you're investing, but I'm not getting that investment in my IRAs and so on. So, but there are other sources of money that you may want to consider. There's private money. There's people that may know you, trust you, like you, that can borrow you money. You could get a personal loan from a bank or financial institution at lower interest rate. You could develop a partnership with other people whereby you give away some of the equity in exchange for for their money. So there's different ways that you can raise the money that's necessary for you to buy your first deal. And I would just caution about taking an early withdrawal unless you really have to, because the penalties can be pretty hefty if you're under 59 and a half years old, and so on. Okay, let's keep going. Johnny H, if you had to choose one as a beginner, would you focus your first deal on net worth, or would you focus your first deal on net worth or cash flow? If I had to choose, so if I was starting over, it depends again, Johnny, on your your cash situation. If your cash needs are being met elsewhere, i.e., a job, other income streams, other streams of income, then you don't need to make all your money. You don't have to live off this cash flow from this house because your needs are being met elsewhere. So going back to my house, the first house I had, it was $50 cash flow. There's no way I could live off $50, obviously. But I didn't have to live off that $50 because I had a job. And that job was the one was giving me the financial cushion to pay my bills. So so it just depends on your cash needs. If your cash needs are being taken care of elsewhere, then what's it called? Then maybe you could do a buy and hold. But if your cash needs are not being met elsewhere, then you may want to focus on cash flow. Okay, so it just depends on your cash situation, and you may have to flip some houses to get the cash and kind of take it from there. So let's have a look. We got any more questions? It's kind of getting close to 8 o'clock. So I think we are kind of wrapping things up. So again, if you want to come to next month, August, we're going to be focusing on tenant screening for the month of August. Got some great content we're going to provide. I do have an ultimate guide to BRRRR. The lessons learned I had, you can get that from my website, Asamoah, Dr. Joe's Ultimate BRRRR Strategy Checklist. So go to my website, as you see on the screen here, joeasamoah.com, to get my Ultimate BRRRR Strategy Checklist. And a lot of good content there, good information. It's free. You can download that from the website. Again, go to www.joeasamoah.com and you can download that there. And with that said, I think we're kind of close to 8 o'clock. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up now. So again, this is Dr. Joe. We're going to, don't forget to subscribe and to the channel. We're going to be going every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on YouTube. So subscribe and click the bell to receive the notifications and so on. So again, with that said and done, I want to see you guys next Wednesday. at 7 p.m. for another Wealth Wednesday. Have yourself a fantastic week, and I will see you next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Take care, guys.